What other bad takes did we have yesterday?
Okay, so all right. Clearly, I was building up to this point. Dan, you can speculate how, it's a wonder that PEDs aren't more prevalent in basketball the way we know it is in football and baseball. What you cannot do, unequivocally, is put someone's name on it who does not have any history of it. I get what you're saying, but Dan, you got to remember, you're not Fran Le Batard or Dan Leibowitz. You're Dan Le Batard. There's a 20 under that. This show has been on the air for 20 years. You've been in the media for longer than that. When you even ask questions of that variety, you are creating something / giving voice or gas to something no matter how unfounded it is. So you cannot say, well, Chael Sonnen said it. If Chael had just said it, if it had just come out, he was this week's guest on Andrew Schultz's show, then maybe that's an opening.
A newsworthy lane? You're talking about timeliness? It's a timeliness question where I can ask questions in we're gonna agree on this part, right? We're living in the skeptical age, right? The age of skepticism. And so if I just make it hypothetical athlete X, I don't even make it LeBron and everything you know. I simply say to you, what do you think is more likely? That an athlete would try and defy age through science at the end of his career, or that one athlete had a career that defied the limits of the human body, unlike any we've ever seen in terms of mileage and how his body holds up for 20 straight years. I'm assuming did Kareem have more minutes? I'm assuming LeBron James has played more minutes than anyone else. Which do you think is more likely?
I think if you put it as if you frame it exactly as you framed it there are people who could say, we know who you're hinting at. But I think you stay on this, albeit very close to that line, on this side of the line of, okay, you can have that conversation.
If I preface it, though, if I'm prefacing it with all that you know about me and my admiration for LeBron, combined with, hey, I'm not accusing anyone of anyone here. I'm trying to have the macro conversation around America's giant, biggest athlete for the last 2 decades, using him as a vehicle, as we talk about Mo Vaughn over here and Ekblad over there.
Right.
Using him as, you've got this unprecedented thing. Can you guys explain to me, America, why this is the line too far on your skepticisms?
So
when I'm not accusing him of anything.
Dan,
I'm just wondering why this is the place that you get this offended.
I'm offended because you said it, Dan. Because and as you say, my admiration for LeBron, you think it absolves you. What it does is it puts more credence in what you're just throwing out as a question. But for people to say, well, Dan Le Batard always says nice things about LeBron and how he's coming to take everybody's stuff, and now he's asking whether he's doing PEDs. Dan, no, I'm just telling you how it received. You're not. I know you're not sending it out that way, but the message is being received that way because of who you are. It would be like, Dan, it would be like if I all of a sudden started talking about J. Cole having ghostwriters. But Amin loves J. Cole. He's just asking a question. How can this guy keep being creative and writing like this without ghostwriters, right? If I said that, given who I am to that person, then it allows people to say, wait a second, I thought this was just a barbershop conversation, but this guy who has all the credibility is bringing it and giving it credence. And so when you say America and skepticism and where's our skepticisms and all that, yes, it's right to be skeptical about things. But also, we live in an age where cockamamie statements have been given credence by people we deem credible, right? It's cockamamie. But this guy's talking about it, so it must be true. Some people might say the 45th president of the United States would not be president if it weren't for credible news organizations during the Republican primaries when it was just a clown show, giving attention to it, as opposed to letting it be a clown show over there and we talk about the real candidates. And what was most likely a farce, a guy just doing it for publicity, would not have risen to the highest office in power. That's the problem, right? And the craziest thing about it, you want to know what a good take was yesterday? Mike Ryan, of all people, said it. He said, you know who's the happiest person right now? Aaron Ekblad. There is an athlete, a white athlete, I might add, who has been ruled, right, a champion using PEDs. If this had happened to Jason Tatum, is Ekblad good? Give me.
Yeah,
He's
good.
above average.
He's good.
Okay, so like Derek White, Kristaps Porzingis,
Drew Holiday.
If it came out that Drew Holiday was on PEDs, you know how many asterisks we would have threw on the table on the Celtics championship?
No, Tatum. Tatum would have. If you do it with Tatum, the others there wouldn't be asterisks.
There would.
Jaylen Brown, there would be.
There would because this is something that is like, it's one thing to be caught juicing. It's another thing to get caught juicing and you're the defending champs, right? This guy should have been the center of the conversation, particularly in your local hour, where we're supposed to talk about local athletes and local sports.
Let me bring something up here.
Start talking about some other guy.
Let me bring something up here because if I were to do things the way that you're alleging that I'm doing them by coming this close to the line on wherever it is
you crossed it, you didn't come close.
Okay, so wherever it is that my credibility resides, what remains of it, the idea that we are talking about 20 years in the oldest player in the league, still dominating the headlines when he's out. We talk about him and how Luka's going to do with him out. It's just crazy that at this age he's doing these things, and because Tom Brady has normalized it. I'm trying to have a conversation with you about skepticism with him as the avatar, the way he is for fatherhood, when all of a sudden him and Stephen A are arguing, or wherever it is that in the modern age you give relevance to and power and currency to these people. We're witnessing something that has no precedent for the human body. And I'm not even questioning it.
But
I'm asking why there aren't questions about it.
That's the same thing, Dan.
Dan, that's the same.
Dan,
like you're bringing it up and saying
that's the problem.
Like asking questions about why we're not asking questions is the same thing as asking questions in the ear of the listener. You might not have that intention, but by bringing it up and saying, hey, that's pretty suspicious. We've never seen anything quite like that. Why aren't you guys asking questions about it? Why aren't you skeptical? Makes me go, oh, should I be skeptical? I guess I should be skeptical.
If I were doing this the way that Amin is accusing me of doing it, I would just look at the camera and get the clicks of making the accusation in some framed way that would be smart. I'm not doing that. I'm simply presenting you with an unprecedented athlete doing unprecedented things at the end of his career and asking why it is that everyone who is watching this would say to me, if after the fact it actually happened, well, yeah, of course.
Dan,
well, yeah, of course.
Dan.
Like that makes sense that body would work more than any human body ever. And, it had some help.
Dan,
and
Dan,
that seems like a legitimate question to me.
You just accused me of accusing you. I'm not accusing you. I understand your intellectual curiosity about it. I'm telling you that there is, in the same way that when we talked about the Britney Spears documentary 3 or 4 years ago or whatever, whenever it came out on Hulu, and there was a scene where she's being mobbed because she went to Starbucks. And everyone's like, oh my God, it must be so awful for her. And I'm like, no, yeah, you're Britney Spears. You don't get to go to Starbucks anymore at that point of her career. You don't get to do that anymore. Stephen A. Smith talks about, I can't go to the movies anymore. He hasn't been to movies in so long. Why? Because he said, if I walk into a movie theater, it distorts the reality of what this experience should be. The experience should be, I'm ready to watch Captain America, whatever. And instead, the experience goes, Stephen A. Smith is here. Hey, man, do you think the Lakers are going to do it? So I don't know if this is ignorance or humility. Dan, you are not in a place where you get to innocently ask that question, even as I know you innocently asked it. Because it comes out innocent here, and by the time it goes into that little camera right there and into that microphone, comes out into the ears and the eyes of people, it loses its innocence completely. And it becomes a prompt to question LeBron James's whatever he's doing, right? And that question, why'd you think that? It's a difference between when Chael Sonnen, noted dumbass, says it.
Alleged dumbass.
Alleged dumbass. And when Dan Le Batard, Dan always says good things about LeBron.
Well,
wait,
no,
why would he bring that up?
No, he didn't side with him on Cookiegate either. So
Well,
now we're
oh
back
my
to
God.
back. Now we're
And
back
now
to back on these, and now it's like, maybe,
Now we got a
maybe there's motive. Some are saying, he went out there and he took shots at the Heat. He accused them of stealing his cookies, and now all of a sudden he's on steroids.
Yep.
Having said all of this, all of you would bet yes. Everyone would bet yes.
Bet yes on
I'm
what?
confused whether he's done it or not.
Chris, but we're on a major podcast on a major network. Accusing someone of doing something that there is no...
Not accused.
He didn't accuse.
Okay,
He asked
asking why we aren't accusing
Yeah,
someone of
he
doing
asked why we
something
didn't accuse.
is... I don't think it's our place to do that.
I'm confused.
Unless there is a legitimate conversation about it stemming from someone with legitimate eyewitness accounts or whatever investigative story there is.
Hold on a second. Does J. Cole write his own songs or not? I think that's really what's been lost on this. Because you go to Dreamville Fest and you have this relationship with J. Cole, and here you are saying he has ghostwriters. Is that so, or is that not
He must
so?
have ghostwriters.
I must, right? Like that seems like it would be the natural progression. But I think, Dan, the thing about it all is...
Okay, so he does.
He must. I mean, clearly.
'Cause
I never thought about it before right now, but
If this is
you
a
brought
lie
it up.
detector, I'm not saying yes or
Yeah, I
no.
brought it
You
up.
brought it up.
Is how this is
I
coming
believe it
back.
now.
Evasive.
brought it
J.
up.
Cole has ghostwriters.
It seems
J.
that way.
Cole took a bigger hit, I think, right there because of his friendship with J. Cole than LeBron did in whatever it is that we're talking
That kind of
about.
proves his point, though. There's nothing wrong
just
with
bringing it
ghostwriters.
up.
That was the point.
Britney Spears, great artist.
Chris, when you ask if you have to bet or whatever, here's the reality. There are things that I want to be first at being right at or early on being right at. And then there are things that I'm perfectly fine.
This is not one of them.
I'm perfectly fine being wrong if it turns out.
Right, because
Years
we're
from now.
jerks. If we're wrong, we're jerks. That's fair. But this one will never, we can agree. This one will never turn out.
Because he's more protected than the president. You
Well,
heard Tony yesterday.
Well,
this
I
one,
mean-
Amin has proven that today. Amin has gone after me harder than he went after Trump or Musk. Amin has proven that today.
I put it on the sheet, man.
Well, he believes he can make a difference in this case. In
no,
the other cases, he knows
also,
he can't.
I don't have credibility when it comes to talking about the president or talking about an oligarch, right? I have credibility when it comes to talking about our sport and especially about how people talk about our sport. And when you hear Rich Paul, going on McAfee or whatever and saying kind of the things he's saying, I see it as, this is the reaction. They are defending this thing that they feel like they are under attack from, right? And so you are basically rolling a grenade into the middle of the aisle and say, but I didn't pull the pin. It's just a grenade. But you're arming people with the tools to begin an assault.
The thing, though, and so you're holding me responsible. I understand. You did it all the way to the primaries. You're holding me responsible for if the question gets poisoned once it's out of my hands, you're giving me a giant media responsibility.
Because
there.
you put the question out there.
I did put the question out there, but I'm about to explain to you, in the content age, I'm about to explain to you the whys of it. I'm super interested in the reaction. I'm super interested in the macro conversation, and the athlete is... I can change it by the decade. It doesn't matter whether it's LeBron. I remember the way people behaved when we turned Maguire and Sosa into the people that we turned them into. And then over the last 20 years, everyone from Lance Armstrong to Barry Bonds to everyone else has been some form of a lie. And so this guy who has managed over 20 years to be a pillar that I've never seen in my journalism career, not just an international icon that has done almost everything the right way, also has, as scientific fact behind him, the fact that his body has held up better than any human body has ever under these conditions. And so I ask of America, not LeBron, why don't you ask why? What happened over the last 20 years on this stuff where we just weren't curious about that and Tom Brady and all the stuff that allows these people to age 10 years beyond previous facts.
Dan, you talked about Maguire and Sosa yesterday and how they had D'Andro in the locker and that reporters were doing interviews at the lockers and we could see the Andro in the background. I think that there's a and then you root, how could we not know? I think there's a massive difference between those examples where they're literally like, hey, this is the thing I take, it's right here, versus you're just looking at it like, that doesn't look right, right? There's look, I could play this game for a lot of athletes. You do really believe Michael Jordan got beat by the Pistons and then said, all I have to do is lift weights, and then all of a sudden, he's indestructible.
Whoa,
and
that's
awesome?
wait a minute. Are you asking that question
I'm
now
not.
publicly?
I'm not. I'm
Be
countering.
careful.
I'm countering your reckless. By the way, this is the most offensive part. We have a button right here. Where is it? That says,
Put it on the poll. Did Michael Jordan take PEDs?
Time to throw away all journalistic credibility and
Don't
get
put that on the
reckless. Here is
Seems
something we
litigious.
like to call reckless speculation.
you can't even blame Chris for not putting. You have the button in front of you at any time. You could have hit that button, and then it still would have been reckless. But at least given the acknowledgement, hey guys, we're gonna play a little bit outside of the sandbox today. Nobody called for it. Nobody. You guys just went along with it. That's the part that was disappointing, Dan, is that there was nobody who was like, whoa, what do we do? Hit that button if you're going to say that. If Stugotz had done that, if Stugotz was the one who asked the question, why isn't anyone asking the question, we would have roasted him. We would have put him up. We would have hung him up in effigy. We would have sent him, or even worse, we would have sent him to the penalty box, right? We had this conversation, or y'all had this conversation, and not once did anyone point out, yo, at least play the sounder if we're going to do this.
I think on the opposite end, and it was another argument that we had yesterday, and it's kind of tied in here, was when we were talking about Laramie Tunsil, and the whole argument was basically like, well, no one really cares that he, smoked weed now in 2025, right? And like, that's kind of where we are in sports. Like, no one really cares if people test positive for PEDs and get suspended anymore.
No, they care because the guy got suspended.
Yeah, but no
Aaron
one
Eckblad.
cares about it.
Well, I'm sure Panthers fans care about it.
I mean, but
No?
there's not the outrage. Like,
Not
there's not
outrage.
the outrage like when Manny Ramirez got suspended or when like any of the bigger names in baseball got suspended. Like, we're now 10 years removed from the shock value of, oh, the people that we really like use steroids and they're cheating and there's this purity in the sport. Now there's just kind of an assumption like, maybe there's something going on there, but like, I don't care because like it's a sport I like. So like, LeBron, even if something was going on there, is not going to get suspended for anything.
It would be the biggest scandal in the history of the sport.
It would be if it came out, which
Yeah.
the NBA is not incentivized for it to
Sure.
ever come out.
Sure.
And that's why people don't really care to look into it because they're just like, maybe everyone's doing it. Because there wasn't that like naivete that there was at the time of Mark McGuire. Was like, whoa,
I think
the best player's cheating? How's that possible?
I think, sure, like there's a purity and an innocence that was had in 1998 that doesn't exist anymore, but still, it is still shocking nonetheless. If that happens, I don't think it's so he did it. Like,
but only if it's him,
sure,
right?
exactly.
Like if Tyler Hero gets suspended for
Bobby Portis.
PETs, we'd be like,
Bobby Portis got suspended, and we're like, basically, you're right. Aaron Eckblad, apparently we were the Stanley
for
Cup
Tyler,
champ.
it'd be like, why isn't he taking more? He's still kind of skinny.
Well, also, Tyler's not a defending champion, and somehow we just avoided talking about that for some reason. I wonder why that is, right? So then it was maybe because you're banging a drum?
Accusing us of bias?
Journalism's dead.
You banged a drum?
They did give you a jersey.